And now, Giant Sports Talk Live. Here are your hosts, Eric and Glenn.
All right, everyone, welcome to a special edition of Giant Sports Talk Live, where we got a special guest with us, Glenn.
Absolutely, and on the what a great way to spend Sunday on the heels of the victory in San Diego today. Giants win, bringing our special guest. Want to make sure I get the name right. Brad Balukjian.
Balukjian.
Yeah, that's good. Right. That's good.
Close enough. All right. Well, Eric, I happen to pick up because I'm a big sports collector, as you know, Eric, and a lot of guys out there watching. A huge collector. My wife throws when I'm out of town like today, I'm in Winnipeg, Manitoba. When I get back to the Bay Area, there'll be the 700 or 800 bubble envelopes in the bathtub ready to be ripped into there. I got all the autograph cards and the eBay stuff. And I happened to be on Amazon one night, and I found a book, and the cover jumped off the screen at me because it looked like a pack of baseball cards. It was called The Wax Pack: On the Open Road in Search of Baseball Afterlife. The author's with us, as you see. Brad, welcome in. Good to have you on the show. And there's so many questions, but first I guess we start with, how did this whole concept come together?
Sure. Well, happy to be here. I grew up collecting baseball cards like so many kids. I'm 43 years old, so we're talking junk wax, late 80s era. And I would go down and buy packs with sticks of gum and all that, but I always wondered what happened to the guys that I grew up collecting. So as a writer and a journalist, I had this idea, like, what if you got a pack that had never been opened from the late 80s, in this case, 1986, the first year that I collected. And you said, okay, here's the deal. Whoever's in this pack, I'm going to go now on a massive 8-week, 11,000-mile road trip to find everyone in the pack and talk to them and ask them, and find out what happened with the rest of their lives, kind of the, where are they now concept on steroids. So I did this in the summer of 2015. I went all around the country, and the players ranged from the totally obscure like Jaime Kokenauer to the absolutely famous like Carlton Fisk. And it's the story of that road trip many years ago.
Well, when I read the book, it started with Rance Mullenix. Now, like I said off the top, I'm in Winnipeg. I've got a home in Winnipeg, and I live right by Oracle Park. So I get the best of both worlds. I don't know about you guys, but surprisingly in Canada today, I'm holding on for dear life. It's about 90 degrees here today, believe it or not. We're almost in a hockey season. I'm dying over here. So let's jump into Chapter 1. Was Rance Mullenix, Chapter 1, the first player? Were they in order as you made your way? And did you how did you put the pieces together in which players you would go in search of, so you weren't backtracking and going all over the country haphazardly?
Sure. So some viewers may be skeptical of like, did you really open just one pack? And the answer is no, but I never mixed cards between packs. So when I had this concept, I realized, okay, if I really just get one pack and open it and like 8 of the guys are dead, or 5 of them live in Indiana, no offense to Indiana, but that doesn't make for a very compelling road trip book, right? So I opened several packs, and the pack that I went with had just the right mix of people spread out around the country to make it a really good road trip story. And only one guy that had passed away, which was Al Cowens. So being based here in the Bay Area, in Oakland, when I looked at the players in the pack, I kind of said, okay, makes sense to start out in California with the California guys, which were Rance Mullenix and Steve Yeager and Gary Templeton. And then, I kind of charted a route that was a little bit zigzaggy, but through the country, getting all the way to the East Coast and then looping around and returning back to California. So Rance, by virtue of being a Central Valley guy, not that far from here, was my first player to go find.
All right. Now, when you found these guys, how did you prepare, so to speak? Did you show up and knock on their? I said to Eric, did the guy knock on their door, or was this pre-planned?
Well, I did a lot of where everybody was located. I did my homework. I spent months researching their careers and their lives and figuring out where they are in the country. And generally I would contact them ahead of time, and I would call up and say, hey, I'm working on this book and I'm going to be in your area on this date. Could we meet up? And I was really aware of wanting to make this book as fun an experience as possible for the reader. And so the book is not really about baseball. It's about life. It's about relationships. It's about what do you do when you're 35 years old and you never can play baseball again, right? How do you kind of retirement is that? How do you deal with that? And so I would interview their kids and their wives and their coaches. And this is not a book for someone that wants to dive deep into statistics. It's about the humanity of these players. And along those lines, I wanted to go out and do things with them, right? So Don Carmen, I went to the zoo to meet up with him. I ended up getting a hitting lesson from Rance Mullenix. Rick Sutcliffe took me to the high school that he went to. And Gary Templeton, we watched Kung Fu movies. And Randy Reddy, we went bowling together. So, all these things make for a better story, because as a journalist and a writer, I'm thinking as I'm interviewing somebody, I'm not just writing down what they're saying. I'm also observing where we are and the environment and describing that. And so that makes it a much more fun book than if I just sat down and interviewed 13 guys and, at the same table every time.
You told us before we went to air that you didn't always get met with open arms, but before the actual tour, if you will, began, the search, were there any players that were skeptical and then they did greet you and it turned out to be a great day?
Well, as you could imagine, not all of these were successes, and not all these guys were eager to talk to some random guy from Oakland, right? So I was fully aware of that. And I think that makes it a better book in some ways, that not everyone was willing to talk to me, because for those chapters, I could always write and I was pretty persistent and pretty, to your question about did I knock on doors? Well, pretty much even took it a step further. And like Carlton Fisk, who didn't want to talk to me, I ended up finding out where he golfs in Sarasota, Florida, and posing as a millionaire home buyer to ambush him on the golf course and ask him what to go try to find him that way. Dwight Gooden, I was in his living room on Long Island, and he was nowhere to be found. And his oldest son ended up being the person that I interviewed that day, and got a whole different perspective on Doc Gooden's life. So as you could imagine, the guys that were the most famous were often the most difficult to get to sit down and talk to me. But I still feel like I was able to tell a good story about each of these players.
Who were the players? I mean, I read each chapter, and you could almost tell by reading the chapter who did give you the time of day, who did greet you so welcomely. But who were the ones that stood out?
Well, I mean, the guys that were just really phenomenal, like someone like Gary Templeton, longtime Padres shortstop, who welcomed me into his home and told me this whole story that had been reported in the media in a not fully honest way back in the day about with Whitey Herzog benching him when Gary Templeton flipped off the crowd. And there were all these layers of that story that really had not been explored before, about what the fans had said to him that prompted him to respond in that way. And so he stood out to me as a real highlight. Someone like Rick Sutcliffe, very generous with his time, and again, taking me all around where he grew up outside of Kansas City, Missouri, and sharing some really personal stuff about his father, and who was a race car driver who had run out on the family when he was only like 11 or 12 years old, and kind of how that impacted the rest of his life. Steve Yeager, a longtime catcher for the Dodgers, telling me about his father. The first time he came to see him play in the major leagues, got so drunk he passed out in the clubhouse during the game. And so what stood out was surprising was how many guys had issues with their dads growing up, and how that kind of affected their own experiences as fathers and as baseball players.
As we told you guys this week, we're talking with Brad. He is the the author of the Wax Packs on the Open Road in Search of Baseball Afterlife. Now, take it a step further. Was there anybody that you just went, wow? I mean, this guy, I feel like part of the family. He brought me in. He wined me, dined me, entertained me. I think he even stayed at one of their homes.
Yeah, I didn't sleep anywhere, but I did get to invite. I got invited to a great 4th of July barbecue with a guy named Jaime Kokenauer, who pitched for the Milwaukee Brewers in the mid '80s. And yeah, that he was, again, he was the least well-known baseball player, but arguably the most well-adjusted in life after baseball. Because he made, he didn't get spoiled by all the fame and the success. And the minute he finished playing baseball, he had a job at a financial company because he had gotten his college degree and he had thought beyond the last inning of his career. And so he was so generous. He welcomed me in. I spent the whole day with meeting him and his family and his longtime friends, and we grilled and watched old baseball games and played Cards Against Humanity. And it was like this. Like you were saying, I was like welcomed into the family, this stranger, right, whose baseball card I had when I was 5 years old, and it was a really, really cool experience.
That's gotta surprised you, really.
Oh yeah, I mean, right? My emotional, the range of my emotions on this experience was, from surprise to delight to disappointment. I mean, it was the whole thing, right? Because as we're talking about, not everyone wanted to talk to me, and some people were surprisingly gracious and others were not. And so, yeah, that's representative of people in any field, right?
Eric, take it away.
Yeah. It's funny. I was reading the description of your book, and this is from the Nebraska Press? Is that who published your book? Is it Nebraska
The
Press?
University of Nebraska. Yeah, they do a ton of great baseball books. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Anyone if you could get published through a university, that's really good. But they were saying in the description, it sounds like you had some eye-opening things as far as your own personal, that said something about compulsive disorder that you had. Did it help? Is that something that the book was able to help you with? And if you don't mind, what was that all about?
Sure. Yeah. Well, the book is really, again, it's the story of this road trip to find all these former baseball players, but it's also a bit about my story, right? As being at the time a guy in my mid-30s and single and kind of figuring out what I'm going to do with my life and where I thought I would be and where I was. And it was kind of neat to travel the country and have these former baseball players be my mentors, right? Because I was asking them not just about, I mean, if you read the first chapter, it opens up with Rance Mullenix giving me marital advice, right, about why his marriage failed. Like, that's not exactly what you might expect, but that is, I think, what makes this book different from a lot of baseball books. Is it's very personal. It talks about, I talk about my life as it's relevant to the story, and I think a lot of people can relate to some of the challenges that the baseball players went through, and me. I mean, so you mentioned. Yeah, I've had obsessive compulsive disorder and dealt with that in my life, and figuring out how that anxiety disorder has affected me, but then getting the help that I needed and opening up and, talking about that openly and talking to the baseball players about their addictions and their struggles with anxiety. That was helpful for all of us, I think.
It's great that you mentioned that, because we talk primarily baseball here, and that's probably one of the biggest things. As a matter of fact, we had Matt Stairs on us a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying, some people have the God-gifted talent, but it's between the ears, the mental strength you need to have to be a professional baseball player. So it sounds like you were able to kind of dig into that with these former baseball players, and maybe the toll that it had on them, or maybe how it just how they were able to get through a major league career. So that is absolutely fantastic.
My theory is that you get to a certain level, like the high minor leagues, there's not a huge difference in talent between the guys. They're all amazing, right? There's some guys that are just obviously at another level. Like a Bryce Harper is not going to be held down, but a lot of these guys who had more talent don't make it, or they flame out. And so Matt Stairs is like the Matt Stairses of the world are the guys that get it, that it is ultimately at that, what separates you at that highest level is, as you said, what's on your shoulders between your ears.
Mhm.
And Don Carmen, one of the players that was in the pack, he works now as a psychologist for Scott Boras, the super agent. And
Ooh,
his
really?
job is to go around the country during the season to meet with people like Bryce Harper, anyone who is a client of Scott Boras, to help them in the moment when they're in a slump and how to get them out of it mentally, right?
interesting.
And so that's such a big part of the game, is the mental aspect of it.
That is awesome. That is quite interesting, where, you don't hear about that with agents. It sounds like Scott Boras really, of course, he makes all that money, but it sounds like he has avenues for his clients to be able to use to help them be a better player, which is absolutely fantastic. Because not only does it help the player, of course, it helps Scott Boras. Another question about your book: Did you come up with those the titles of your chapters yourself? Because the titles of these chapters are fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
just perusing it, straight out of Compton. You got was it Leader of the Pack, Vincent Van Gogh? You got Houston, we have a problem. That's fantastic. I love this. I love the title of these chapters.
Yeah, thanks, man. No, I got my publisher was great. They let me, use the title I want and the cover
Awesome.
and the chapter title. So it was all good. Yeah.
The
That's
cover
awesome.
was epic.
Oh,
I mean, you couldn't ask for a better cover. That's one of the reasons it jumped off when I was going through Amazon. I actually was looking for books on baseball cards and collecting, and I always have a little library of those kind of books. I wanted to see if there's anything new, and that one just jumped out. Whoa, a whole pack of card book here. What do we got going? What we got going on here?
They made it look just like a pack of 86 tops. So
they did.
It was fantastic.
Yes, the blue, and that was right on. So I remember reading in your book, what kind of car did you take? And apparently you didn't know if you were going to make it.
Yeah, well, that was some little added drama. Was it wasn't exactly like I'm on the road here, staying in 5-star hotels and driving a Lexus, right? Like I was just scrapping to get by. So my car was a 2002 Honda Accord that already had hundreds of thousands of miles on the odometer. So yeah, it was kind of like one of the constant worries was not just, will Carlton Fisk kick my ass? It was also like, will my car make it through this journey? And so, yeah, that was kind of fun, just to have another road trip theme going on.
Oh, you must have had some side stories, as you're going from one place to another within your travels. I'm sure there had to been some great side stories, not necessarily with the players, but just with the trip itself as you're driving across the country.
Yeah, and I'll answer that in 1 second, but I'm looking at the chat here, and so Greg is wondering who I am. So Greg, my name's Brad. I wrote a book about tracking down everyone in a pack of 1986 Topps baseball cards called the Wax Pack, and now we're answering questions about what that book's all about. And to answer your question, Eric, yeah, at the time, being a single guy in my mid-30s, I did include some stories from the road that were fun, like Randy Reddy. Showing him how to use Tinder as I was bowling with him in Dallas, Texas, and learning that we're both single. So we had some fun with just the element of the being on the road and the travel.
Nice.
Any of these players stayed in touch with you?
Yeah, Don Carmen. I just was texting with him a couple weeks ago. Rance Mullenix is here in California, and I've kept in touch. He actually. I'm doing a new project where I'm interviewing other players from that era for my website. And awesome. There's a guy named Lloyd Mosby who played for the Blue Jays back in the 80s. And Rance put me in touch with him to help me get that interview. So I'm still, years later in touch with these guys.
Awesome.
That is absolutely fantastic. Have you always wanted to be a writer? Is there something that is, and I'm guessing you have a love of the game of baseball. Absolutely. If you're doing a book on baseball. So where was your love of baseball? Where did it come from? And how did you want to, hey, you know what? I think I want to write about baseball.
And what was your team? What was your team being a Bay Area guy?
And I see in the chat here, D-Shot316 has got a great picture of Andre the Giant. So to answer,
there you go.
Answer your question, Eric, I love anything 80s.
Did we lose him?
Uh-oh.
My interest goes beyond baseball. It goes to other things as well, like professional wrestling. But I'm a writer by trade. I'm also a scientist. I have a weird career. I got my PhD in biology, but I also write books about wrestlers and baseball players.
You know what? That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I used to work for magazines. I got trained as a journalist. Used to work for the LA Times. So,
wow.
I have a background in journalism and writing.
We lost you for a second there. What was your? Did you mention what was your team growing up?
Oh, my team. I've always been a Philly fan. Yeah.
Really?
Okay.
A Bay Area guy cheering on the Phillies.
Well, I grew up in Rhode Island, so
okay.
I'm East Coast. Eagles, Phillies. I'm sure that won't play very well here in a Giants show, but it is what it is.
That is awesome. You kind of speak to me. I spent a career in the Air Force. I got a master's degree in history, but I absolutely love baseball. So it's kind of the same thing. You got so many different things that just, gets the juices flowing, if you will. So that is absolutely fantastic.
Would we see a part 2? Is there another part 2 of this book?
Well, I think if I did, part 2 was not baseball, it was wrestling. So if I did a part 3, it might be another sport, right?
Okay.
But it just depends. Writing books is tough, man. It's like financially, it's not
right.
It's people think, oh, you're a writer, you must have a glamorous life. I'm like, no, man, I rent a room in Concord. I'm not exactly ringing the cash register, but I do what I love. I'm passionate about it. I'd love to write more books, but it has to be like financially viable.
Right. How did that go? How did that work out? Was the planning of your book, did you get with a publisher first, or did you decide to go on, you did it yourself and then you reached out to a publisher?
No, first I had an agent, and then I took the trip on my own dime with no guarantees of anything. And then I struggled for 4 years and got rejected 38 times by publishers.
Wow.
And then finally got the book published in 2020. And the book did great. It was a LA Times bestseller, and it got a lot of good.
I saw the praises you had.
Got a lot of good reception. So because the book did well, it made it much easier to get a book deal for my second book. So
correct.
The wrestling book, was published by a major New York publisher, and it had a lot more investment behind it. But it's like anything creative, right? Like, you have one project that hits big, and then if it doesn't, like, you're kind of at the whims of the industry.
Gotcha. That is so. You know what though? I love your you just kept at it. Even though you were getting rejected, you still, hey, this is something I love. This is something I want to do, and you kept pushing it. And next thing you know, hey, you got some success out of it. That's just.
I hope you sold. I hope you sold lots of books, because I'm sure you had to see a dentist after eating that gum.
Yeah. My dad's a dentist, so that kind of helps.
Oh, there you go. You got everything covered.
There you go. Hey, you got your dad on standby. Hey, about to put this gum in my mouth.
Eric, why don't you talk? Eric's a big wrestling fan, so Eric, why don't you just lead us down that path?
Oh my gosh! When I saw that, I was like, "Wow, that is awesome."
Excited.
So we could go down the road of wrestling. There's a few wrestling fans here in the chat. I call it wrestling, because it's wrestling. How did you come up? You said you were a wrestling fan when you grew up. Did you have an idea? Okay, this is who I want to track down. Who exactly? Let's get to what was the
concept,
the thesis of it, I guess.
So the wrestling book's called The Six Pack: On the Open Road in Search of WrestleMania. And it's based on, it starts out with my relationship with the Iron Sheik, who was my favorite wrestler as a kid. No one else's favorite wrestler.
Yeah.
But I got to know the Iron Sheik personally when I was in college. And then I quit my job at a magazine in 2005 to go live near him in Fayetteville, Georgia, to write his life story. And at that point, he was so hooked on crack, literally, that he threatened to kill me. And so the first line of the wrestling book is, the Iron Sheik just threatened to kill me.
Oh, no way.
And then from there, I talk about how that whole project fell apart. And then 17 years later, in 2022, I got back on the road and I said, okay, now I'm going to go find the Iron Sheik again, 17 years later, and I'm going to find the guys that were there the night he won the WWF championship in 1983. So I went to find Sergeant Slaughter and Tito Santana and the Masked Superstar. And then, of course, I was like, well, I can't write a book about this time without talking about Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon. So I also included them in the mix. And so, yeah, those are the guys. Those are the people that were, to answer your question, Mo, I wrote about Hulk Hogan and the Iron Sheik and Sergeant Slaughter and Tito Santana and all these guys from the mid 80s.
Those are the guys. I'm telling you, there's two guys that really, of course, Hulk Hogan, but the other guys, Tito Santana, I used to love watching him. He used to have some epic battles with Paul Orndorff.
Yeah.
Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and his feud that he had with Randy Macho Man Savage. I mean, it's just, Junkyard Dog. Oh, yep. Remember the Barbarian, remember? He's out there, you hear him just barking. God, it was just, I absolutely love it. That is incredible, though, to start your book about the Iron Sheik threatening to kill you.
Yeah.
So, listen, were you able to? Well, you're alive, so you were.
I was very lucky to get to reunite with the Iron Sheik less than a year before he passed away. So,
okay.
You know, the book is the story of that whole road trip to go find him and these other guys. And it has a pretty nice happy ending. So that's always good. But yeah, no, that's, you could pretty much take any guy between the ages of 40 and 57 from the United States and mention the names you just mentioned, and they're going to smile, right?
Exactly.
Because it was just part of our culture at that time.
Yes. And you said that you had a relationship with him while in your college. How did that come about, having a relationship with the Iron Sheik?
Just that same old persistence you referenced. Like I found, at that point, I've always been a pretty resourceful guy. Like I found out, okay, the Iron Sheik is no longer on top. Now he's wrestling in front of 200 people at a high school gym in, Secaucus, New Jersey. So I found out who his agent was on the internet, and I introduced myself and started talking to him and said, hey, I'd love to help you out with a show sometime. And when he had the Iron Sheik in for an appearance, I drove down to New Jersey and met the Iron Sheik, and then just impressed him with like all my knowledge of his career. And he and I, that first night, I ended up spending the whole night with him. And, he was smoking a heroic amount of marijuana in the room. And just,
heroic,
so yeah, it was just a totally weird, but totally awesome, way to meet your heroes.
That's awesome. And that tag team of Nikolai Volkov and Iron Sheik, that was like you at the heyday of WWF, that was the team. That was the tag team that you had to beat. That is just absolutely incredible to hear.
Well, Eric, we got a question in the chat, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
and this can relate to ball, which we talked earlier in your book, or wrestlers of yesteryear. Any of them dismissive to you? Like you mentioned Carlton off air, but if you want to get in more about that.
Fisk, right? Carlton Fisk not wanting to talk to me. Dwight Gooden standing me up at his house in Long Island. Vince Coleman was really tough. And the wrestlers, I went on a long goose chase to find Sergeant Slaughter. And so I went and found his high school football coach in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. And,
you are resourceful.
Dug up his high school yearbook. And I mean, if you want to be a really good journalist, you just have to work your ass off and go to any lengths to get to the story, right?
You might have a good career with the CIA. Just saying. Wow. That is something. Oh, there was something I was going to mention about that. Now with I don't know if you've been keeping an eye on it. It sounds like there's a big documentary coming out on Vince McMahon. Were you able to talk to him at length in your book?
Yeah, no, as you can imagine, Vince McMahon doesn't want to talk to anybody because he's in such hot water. But as I was reporting this book, all that stuff was going on, was coming out about Vince and the sexual assault and all of that. So it was, his career was unraveling in real time, and I was kind of writing about that as I went.
Wow.
And I'm looking forward to that documentary because I think there's gonna be a lot of kind of bombshells that are dropped there. And my book talks a lot about Vince, not in a terribly favorable light, but I think it's a fair portrayal.
Fair enough.
If people watch that documentary, I think my book is like a nice companion to that.
Interesting. Hey, that kind of, did you happen to know that Netflix series is coming out? Because it
Yeah.
dovetailed nicely with when your release of your book.
Yeah, I did. I knew it was coming out soon. I actually talked to my publisher last week and said, "Hey, like let's get the word out some more because this is going to be something people are watching."
That makes sense. That makes absolute. Oh wow, that is something
Awesome.
fortuitous right there.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Eric's a big wrestling fan, so when he found out there was a second book, he was pretty excited.
I was. I don't care for the wrestling today. It's for some. It's just I don't know what it is. It's the way that they wrestle. It's the mic skills.
It's very different. It's very different.
It is.
All right.
It's not the same.
For me, it's
not
the glitz and glamour. I like the old school.
Yeah.
Oh, it was just awesome, man. It was just different. You had the personalities, Bobby the Brain Heenan, Jimmy Hart and Mr. Fuji, just talking about managers. It's just, it was just different than it is today, but oh, well.
We're different, right? We're older. Our society's different. Yep. Our entertainment's different. It's
Good
just,
point.
Everything evolves.
Absolutely.
Well, I asked you if there'd be a part 2 to the book, Talking Baseball. Obviously, you mentioned you considered part 2 to be the wrestling. You said it might be other sports. What other sports would we possibly see in another chapter of your life?
Football could be really interesting. It would always be that era in the 80s. I play hockey. Glenn, if you're in Canada, I'm sure hockey's big up there.
It is.
But I like hockey a lot, and so I've thought about something with hockey and goalies, especially because goalies are such weirdos, and I'm a goalie, so thought about boxing. So yeah, there's a lot of possibilities there.
Well, if you ever need to get in contact with any hockey players, I can get you covered.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's
excellent.
This guy right here, man.
Yeah, I spent 18 years in the American Hockey League.
Oh, you played?
I played briefly, but then my whole career was broadcasting after I got hurt.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, I broadcast for a long time. So I've off air. They're off air, so I don't know. We can tell a lot of them in the books. I've told Eric some stories and stuff you see, man. Oh my gosh. And then stuff that happens along the way, and you go, geez, I knew this guy. Like I was telling Eric the other day, I think we mentioned it on the show to close out the show the other night, Eric, about we've got 9/11 coming up.
Yes.
Right. And there was a guy on our team in Fredericton, New Brunswick. And he had he gave up his career. He's a pretty good hockey player. Gave up his career to go. And because he had graduated with honors, I think he went to Boston University. He says, I'm giving it up because I'm going straight to the top. And he had a job with the Los Angeles Kings as the head of scouting. He goes, I'm set. I got a job for the rest of my life. And then he left Boston on 9/11.
Oh, man.
To go to Los Angeles, never made it.
Wow.
So that would be a story in my book.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember Clint Malarchuk. He almost died on the ice. He got cut by a skate across the jugular vein. Yeah. I was at a game in Nova Scotia one night in the AHL. I wasn't broadcasting, but we were in it a day early, so I hung out at the rink, watched the game, and a guy got hit from behind, paralyzed for life. Member of the Rochester Americans. So, yeah, hockey to me, I think it would be a fascinating read, and I don't know what kind of angle you would take. The goalie angle is because yes,
like
indeed, goalies are bizarre creatures.
Right.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, let's get back to the wax pack. I was saying you got prey. Were you able to talk to any of these people who reviewed your book? You got Bob Costas. You got George Will.
Yeah.
Were you able to talk to some of these people?
Yeah, Bob Costas was very, very, he gave me a lot of feedback on the book. It was really nice. And, he kind of we had our own little chat about things. So I was flattered that he was so into the book. A lot of the baseball media people like Jason Stark and Tyler Kapner, they were great, very supportive. I was really, within the baseball media ecosystem, most people were super generous and friendly and helpful. And I would always try to do the same, right? Like promote other people's books and help each other out. Cause it's, again, it is fewer and fewer people read these days, and it's harder and harder to get books out there. And so when we can help each other, it's always good.
You know,
Did
it's a
any of the
shame.
guys in radio or media, like, just throwing out names, ESPN, Fox Sports, so many sports radio across the country. Did you get a lot of coverage, get a lot of this kind of thing, inviting you on?
Yeah, I was on MLB Network twice with Matt Vescursion and those
nice.
guys, John Smoltz, and I did the Giants show in spring training, which was great. It was right before the pandemic. I mean, part of it, the pandemic hit right when my book came out, so it was a strange time for all this. But I did get a lot of really great media coverage. So,
did you get a chance to talk to Marty Lurie? Usually, Marty Lurie has.
Yeah, Marty was the guy that interviewed me. Yeah,
there you go.
Not surprising.
Exactly. And you speak to something, man, and that's a shame. In this day and age, here we are on YouTube, it's absolutely fantastic, but it's part of the whole social media stuff.
Right.
But to be able to sit down with a good book in your hands, I mean, there is nothing better. Let your imagination, let the author, paint that story. I just love reading books.
I'm curious. I'm curious that you mentioned that. And this is just a side note, a little short snapper. But in this day and age, never thought of that. I went out. I like having the book.
Yes,
I like to just be able to pull it off the shelf and read a chapter at nauseum over and over if I like it. When you look at the sales of your book, what was the difference between actual copies and what we would call just online reading? You can buy the book and have it on a platform.
Yeah. Well,
is there a big difference?
20 years ago, people predicted the death of the hard copy book, right? It was like the ebook was going to take over the world, the Kindle. Well, I can tell you that with the Wax Pack, 80% of my sales were the hardcover physical book.
Good.
Nice.
And 10% were audiobook and 10% were the ebook. I mean, audio was the only medium that's really growing. The ebook has never really caught on, and I'm happy to say that the physical hard copy book is still doing pretty well.
Did you voice the audiobook?
I did, yeah, and they gave me a new respect for anyone in voice acting or anything. It's a tough thing to narrate a book. It's you screw up so much and have to start over. And
no, that's cool because I bought some in the past, and to me, there's nothing worse than you buy a book written by one person, and I go, I don't even recognize this voice. Who's this? I'd rather the actual author voice the book.
Yeah, that's why I did it. I said, I want, especially because my books there's a lot of first person. I'm in the book as a character. And so it makes a difference to have me be the one talking to you.
Nice. Did you get any blowback by any of the players that you interviewed at all? Or was everyone pretty happy with the way they were portrayed?
Yeah, well, I think the blowback would have come from the guys that wouldn't talk to me, like Vince Coleman and Carlton Fisk. And I mean, I'll be honest, like every morning in the very back of my brain, there's like that slight, I'm like, is this going to be the day when I get chewed out by Carlton Fisk, calling me up and giving me a piece of his mind? But so far, no, I've not had any pushback because the people that I talk to generally, I think were happy with their portrayal.
That's great. That is something, man. Oh, speaking of which, since we're talking baseball, how you feeling about your Phillies?
Well, it was a hot start, a slow little middle, and now I think it's picking up again. So I think it's all about whatever team. It's like, where are you when the season ends in terms of your momentum, right? Like,
right.
Are you peaking at the right time?
You guys got the starting pitching and of course the lineup. Come on.
Yeah, I feel good. I feel like this is, I mean, the Phillies have got to feel like if they don't make the World Series, it's a failure, I think.
Correct. And as you should as a team, man. That should be the goal. The goal shouldn't be about just trying to get into the wild card here.
We know about that.
You know where I'm going with that. But it's here's something I've been hammering home here the last week and a half. I think the Giants need to go out there and get a Juan Soto. Because I mean, the Giants need a superstar, not only just for the superstardom, but the talent and the age. Do you think the Phillies try to make a run at Soto, or do you think it's just too much because they got so much on their?
I don't think so. I think also because there's this chemistry element that I know is very intangible, but I think the Phillies core is set, and it has been set for like 3 or 4 years. And bringing in a big name like that at this point, I think they don't want to screw with that chemistry.
Well, he did have Harper, he did have Harper and Turner as teammates in Washington.
Yeah.
So I don't, but then again, what I was to my whole premise is if Soto wants to be the guy in the area, San Francisco can do that. He could be the guy, in Philly, it's Harper. Harper is the guy. Soto will not be the guy over Harper.
I always wonder with San Francisco, this affects LA too, but the fact that this is a very unromantic thing to say, but the financial, the state income tax in California when you play in California versus other states, I wonder these guys that have these huge contracts that they don't, unless they go to LA, which has its own Hollywood culture, are they kind of I don't want that much of my salary to get taken away, because you haven't seen a lot of big name free agents come here recently, and then I think the park itself in terms of the weather I wonder if that affects. These are things that are sort of evergreen challenges for the Giants. I think
true. That is true. There is no.
I got bad news for you too. There's no way the Phillies could ever land a Soto because Eric already has them ripping down the Coke bottle out in left field and put a big statue of Soto up.
Yeah.
Hey, whatever you got to do, man. Rename the park Juan Soto Park. I don't care. Get the guy.
When you were as a kid, you were such a ball fan. We often talk on our show about rule changes. We talked to Matt Stairs about that a couple of weeks ago. The only rule change he liked was having the extra teams make it, and that bodes well for guys like me and Eric. Every night we get to look at this wild card. You get the Mets, and you got Atlanta. They're going neck and neck. Could go down to the final day of the season the way they're going. As far as changes to baseball from the 80s when you and I were kids, teenagers watching ball, and now, what do you see as the biggest differences? What do you like? What do you not like?
Well, I don't like interleague play, and I know that may sound like a really crotchety old thing to say, but I liked when the two leagues were more distinct.
Yes,
and so I don't think interleague play has really added anything to the game. I do like a lot of the other changes. I like the pitch clock. I think, there was all this outrage and then no one talks about it anymore because everyone got used to it. Just like everyone, I think, it's they're going to get used to it. It's just going to become part of the deal. I'm fine with most of the rule changes. I think that but I don't really compare. I still enjoy baseball now, just like I enjoyed it in 1986. And I don't think it's even if you love baseball, you love baseball. I really think they can make these changes. I still love the game. I still think it's still the same game at its core. If you go watch a game from 1986 on YouTube, you'll enjoy it if you like that brand of baseball because the games were quick and there was a lot of hit and run strategy and stealing bases, and
yes,
it was a fast paced, different style of game. But I don't think it necessarily needs to go back to that. I can still appreciate the game as it is today, as I did back then. It's just a different, it's a different flavor basically. So
yeah,
in terms
of
the
players, were any of the players you met or talked to during your, your whole campaign writing the book, or any other players you've talked to in general, any of them ever come out and said, "Oh man, I wish I was a younger guy and could still swing the bat," and looked at the salaries they make today?
Well, yeah, they all say that. So I have this new platform called the Brad Pack where I'm interviewing guys from that era, right? So I talked to guys like Dave Dravecki and Steve Jeltz and guys from the 80s, and they all say they wish they could play in the financial environment, but they also pretty much all say they don't like the rule changes, and I think that is just what every generation does. Right. I really think that it's like the guys today, if you interview them 20 years from now and they've changed the rules in baseball and there's robo umps or whatever, the players today are going to say, "Oh, it was better in my day," because that's just like human nature to lionize the era that you played in. And
the only fear I have is that they're coming on so fast and so furious. We have had so many changes in the last 2 or 3 years, 4 years, and now they're talking. I know Eric and I think it's absolutely nuts.
I don't see it happening.
There will be. They made it mandatory that if a relief pitcher comes in, he faces 3 batters. Then they're saying a starter's got to go 6 innings, and this is too much for me. An old guy.
Okay, but let me ask you, Glenn, why don't you like the idea of the starter going 6 innings?
Oh, I love the starter going 6 innings.
Why? I don't think the union will ever. I don't think that'll ever come to fruition.
But the whether it's tenable or not is a different question than your personal preference.
Right.
I don't mind it. I just don't think it's plausible. It's feasible. Okay.
I like it for the simple fact. Well, so
I think baseball is being overmanaged right now.
That's the issue I have,
especially in the playoffs. Guy pitches 2 innings and no hit ball. He's just 2 2/3. He's gunning it, and then I'm like, what the hell's that?
Here's the deal. I don't like the over legislation of the game. That's what I don't like. Do I want to see starters go 16? Yes. But especially if you get into the playoffs, or if a guy is just not having his game and if he's leaking oil in the 5th inning, but you got to still keep him out there, you're taking the strategy out of your manager's hands rather than, being, the league saying you got to go this many. It's similar to with the, where a reliever's got to face 3 batters. I understand it quickens the game. I understand that. But again, I want to see the manager be able to navigate troubled waters.
Yes, an engagement thrown over to first base engagement saying, oh, you can only throw over there twice. And then it just sets up the steal. The guy's almost guaranteed second base.
Well, I mean, Glenn's right about the union thing, but I think that if you really want to get starting pitchers to go deeper into games, you don't make them go 6. You say you can only carry 10 pitchers on your staff.
Ooh.
And that's if you go back to the
union won't allow that either.
They won't. No, they won't. You're right, and that's the union's not going to go for that. But
no.
If you go back to the
interesting,
80s, most teams back in the 80s they would only carry 10, 11 pitchers, and
right. It was a 4-man rotation.
Yeah, or even if they had 5, they had basically 5 relievers.
Right.
And I think that's that again, but to your point, Glenn, they're not going to allow that, and the union's not going to go for that.
No.
Yeah, that unfortunately, I
just don't like that over legislation of the game. Let it play out. I've often said to Eric, my famous line is, "It's not a Broadway musical, and it ends with a big fury at the end. It's got to play out. It is what it is."
I think the reason why they over legislate is it's all just pure economics, right?
Yeah,
they know that baseball, like winning you over, Glenn, is not. They don't care. I mean, sorry,
you're right.
They care about the 15-year-old.
That's what it is. And unfortunately, today's 15-year-old isn't the 15-year-old from the 80s.
Right.
And it's just different. And that's what they're tailoring it to. Unfortunately, I guess we just got to just move our way. We just move on down the line, let the young guys come in.
I told Eric how I fell in love with baseball. And that was, I opened up a pack of baseball. Well, I liked cards anyway. I opened up a 74 wax pack of O-Pee-Chee hockey and got Inge Hammerstrom. And I remember my first baseball pack in 1977. I got Otto Velez of the Toronto Blue Jays. Do you remember? Was it cards that got you into baseball, or was it baseball that got you into cards? And do you remember your first pack?
Not my first literal pack, but my dad got me into baseball, and then that got me into cards. And I remember 86 Topps was my first year. So I don't remember actually my first pack. I do remember my 86 Topps Jose Oquendo for some reason stands out in my head the same way that the guys you mentioned did for you. So, when you're a kid and you collect cards, you have those certain cards that stand out.
Oh, absolutely. It's the same way with me. You grew up with the game because my dad, he loved the game. He was a softball umpire for, gosh, it must have been 20 years in our town. I grew up in Tracy, and but his love of baseball passed on to me. And then and then that gets you into card collecting. And all my friends were card collecting, so we're all hey, I'll trade you your Will Clark for your Randy Johnson, whatever
there it is.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Ask and you shall receive. Eric knows my card collection is pretty extensive.
Oh, geez.
What I love too about now every card, generally they have the high definition photos and the
Correct.
action. Like I love that that's just the guy in his like warm-up jacket in spring training, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's semi scowling at the camera. I mean,
yes, just it's the character of it. It just, yeah, absolutely. I love it. Good stuff. The cards back when, back in the 80s, it was just fantastic. The artwork, except for those red border ones. Remember what were those ones I was showing you, Glenn? The ones I have with all the red border and it has the red, white, and blue around them. Remember, it's all red border.
Oh, I think those are old tops.
All Stars
well.
or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah, All Stars from the early 80s. Yeah.
I didn't like that one though.
Hey, Brad, did you ever work on getting any signed along the way?
Oh yeah,
big autograph guy.
Not now. As a kid, I was, but I did have. If you look at the, one quick way to know who I talked to and who I didn't is if you look in the actual book, the cards that are signed are the guys that spoke to me.
Yeah.
The ones that are not. So whenever I met with a guy, I'd have him autograph the card.
Yeah.
And that's something I don't collect as an adult, but when I interview these guys now, I always ask them that. Like, when I was talking to Dave Dravecki, like, hey, do you still? Because I know there's the whole autograph through the mail thing, and some of these guys, still sign and some don't, and so I'm just always curious about that.
Well, that's the way I reach out to some of the players. I told Eric, I've always been fascinated by the pitch with the Montreal Expos, Stan Bonson. He came up with his own pitch, the palm ball. So I just wrote to him 2 weeks ago, gave him my business card, my information, said, hey, we'd love to have you on the show. And I'm driving through Monterey last Thursday. I said, holy crap, Eric, I just got a text message from Stan Bonson in Los Angeles, wants to come on the show.
That's great.
Yeah. It must drive players crazy though. I mean, I've got a book and it's got every home address for every player in every sport.
Well, I think those books have been around for 40 years, so they're used to it by now. And I think the guys that get that always have understood that they don't have a job and they don't have a legacy and they don't have a career without the fans. They're fine with it. They get it. If you get it, you get it. If you don't get it, you don't. Right. And the guys that don't get it, they don't sign at all. But I think a lot
or they sign it to show for $250 a card.
Right. Exactly.
Like a Carlton Fisk.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I think I found fascinating about the book was when I went through it chapter by chapter. These are all guys that I grew up watching. Like when I was mesmerized by the first chapter with Mullinix and how you spent time with him and he had you in his home and they made you supper and I saw this autographed card and I'm like, I was able to talk to Eric at length ad nauseum about his days with the Toronto Blue Jays and how he has he's got a World Series ring,
right? And
who he played with, and I
think actually all but one of the players in the book played at least 10 years, which is a long time. And I think that's one way the game has changed is the guys like the fringe veterans in their mid to late 30s no longer stick around and hang on much anymore. Like a guy like Lee Mazzilli in my book, or a guy like a Steve Yeager, who like when they're 37, 38, they could still play a role as a pinch hitter. Yeah, you still have a couple guys that can do that, but it's become a younger game now.
A lot of turnaround too.
Nowadays, I mean, back then you were probably considered your prime. What they were going for was like age 30. Now I feel like your prime is 25, right? 24, 23. It's like, it's gotten younger and younger as the game has changed to prioritize signing guys and locking them up to big contracts before free agency and, avoiding free agency, that kind of thing.
Do you still collect anything at all? Do you go to any of the shows or, a great way to meet players, the big players, sought after players is the National, which I was at in Cleveland this year. It's predominantly in Chicago. Is there a bit of a collector inside you? Because once you're a collector, they can take you out of collecting, but can't take the collecting out of you.
Right. So I do like to go to shows now and then and just buy packs or buy, I was never into value. I was always into like the teams that I liked and the players that I liked. So
cool.
I'm the guy that's like shuffling through the stack of 84 Topps Commons, right? And because
it's the sentimental value that you enjoy. Yes.
Yeah,
Now,
I have that problem too, don't I, Eric?
Yeah, just a little bit.
I have the world's largest Wilmer Flores collection.
He's got a Wilmer Flores issue. We're working on that.
It's a problem I have, but I'm getting help.
To circle back to the book, did you have expectations going into traveling? Were your expectations met, or was it not exactly what you thought it was going to turn out to be?
Well, I literally, there's a line in the book where I literally say expectations can be dangerous, because you're just when you think you know what's going to happen, things change. So I learned to be pretty open to everything going a different direction.
Nice.
And I think I've always said that the road of suffering is paved in expectation. And that, I really think in life that it's a danger. I think goals are healthy, expectations are not.
That makes sense. I like that.
And so
that is something that's some words of wisdom right there. That is absolutely fantastic. If you go in with an open mind, you'll be able to what do you want to say? You'll be able to handle it better.
Yeah.
Rather than having these expectations and then they come crashing down. And if you can't accept it, it could do some serious damage to someone's psyche.
Right. Well, right. Because really an expectation is just putting your future happiness contingent on an outcome that you may not have that much control over.
Right. There you go.
Eric, man. I think Eric deserves some credit. Eric, you want to show Brad the thumbnail you come up with? I thought it was absolutely brilliant. We were promoting the show for the past week. How's that look?
Oh, that's fantastic! Yeah, can you send me that as a JPEG so I could?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that.
Is a PNG better, or is that fine? Or
yeah, that works.
I tell you what, just give your contact information to Glenn, and then he can send it to me, and I'll be able to send it right out for you.
And also, so it looks like Mark Graves in your chat asked, has the auto cards and packs made the regular cards obsolete? And I mean, I'm not a huge collector now, but from what little I know about this, I would say kind of. Like, it seems like everyone now is just ripping and hunting for those insert things, and it's like the rest is just throwaway. Like, I went to a 12-year-old ups there, we're giving them all these packs, and it was just without even looking, except whether they had like an autograph card. And I was like, well, you're kind of missing some of the fun, right?
Right.
I told Eric that a lot of the hospitals now, you used to be able to take all your boxes of commons, take them to like six children's hospitals, and they won't even take them anymore. They're like, no, we don't want them.
Yeah.
And I like to be able to, like you mentioned, a player from that. And I like to go and root through the monster box or the shoe box and find that card and read the back of it. Right. I don't know. I think the common is sometimes the most important card in a set.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the industry has changed in so many ways where, for us growing up, it was about the time spent with the card and the information that you could get from it. And information is so easily available now that it's not the same experience.
Exactly.
Oh, Brad, right on.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You basically use the baseball card to understand how good the player has been.
Yeah, real reference.
Nowadays, you just bring up Baseball Reference and everything's Baseball Savant, you name it. Everything's right there at your fingertips.
And you must see it too when you go to the shows like I do, Brad. I mean, kids today, they don't collect cards. They deal cards. You literally got little guys who are 10 years old, Eric, in a shirt and tie and a briefcase.
Yeah,
I'm not kidding. And I would have a $5 bill. I used to buy cards in junior high and high school. I buy them by the bag for $5. Well, I knew the color of a Canadian $5 bill, but these kids, they got handfuls of $100 bills, Eric. Guys doing deals for $1,500, $2,000. I'm like, my God, what 10-year-old in my era had $2,000 to spend on cards?
Wow.
It didn't happen.
That's incredible.
That's what it's like at the shows now, boys. Holy cow.
Jeez.
Yeah, they're not collectors, and I don't think they really even have a love of the game. They're flippers.
Yeah.
They're miniature financial advisors, what they are.
Absolutely.
I know we got to wrap it up soon, but we've been talking about your book, The Wax Pack. On the Open Road in Search of Baseball Afterlife. You also have the wrestling book. Give us the title of that one. Where can people buy your book?
Sure, thank you. The wrestling book is called The Six Pack on the Open Road in Search of WrestleMania, and you can get any of these books on Amazon, at your local bookstore. They're pretty much out there wherever you get books.
Got there.
And if people want to get in touch with me, I'm at thebradpack.com.
Ooh,
and,
okay. Hold on, let me find that.
Yeah, bradpack.com. I have a bunch of bonus content for my books, which is fun. Like, if you want to hear the original audio interview with one of the people I spoke to, and a lot of the material that didn't end up in the book, you can find it through there. So it's, yeah.
Do you have to sign up for that, or can you just go on the website and find that yourself?
You can go up, you can get some of it for free. And then there's a sign up for all the material through the Patreon site.
Good. Okay.
There it is. This is it right here. Right. And here's the six pack coming out.
Yeah.
Awesome. That is awesome.
Was there anything else you wanted to ask Eric or Brad? Anything you wanted to add?
No, I appreciate you guys having me on and for discovering the book. And, it's been fun chatting about all these different things.
Absolutely.
Oh, I thought it'd be cool to just reach out to you. After reading the book, I fell in love with it after the first chapter and the story of Rance Mullenix. And from then it just got crazier and crazier. And I loved your chapter with Carlton Fisk. So I'm glad you brought that up. It just shows, Eric, that life is not easy.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to buy this book. I absolutely, because I got the glory of their time, so I'm gonna have to go get this book. 100%, absolutely.
Cool. Right. Well, thanks again, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, Brad.
Hey, Brad, thanks. We appreciate your donation of time to our show.
All right, take care.
Take care, Brad. All right,
there he is, gone. Yeah, I'm always interested in anything. It doesn't have to just be Giants baseball, Eric. If it's baseball related,
that's awesome,
pretty
man.
Cool.
It's just you know what it's about. It's about just having that conversation. A like-minded baseball guy, he may have different opinions. Look, he has different opinions of the rules changes. That's fine. Yeah. That's okay. It's nice to have that discussion. But I love what he brought to the table as far as what he was trying to convey in his book, the Wax Pack. Man, that is something. I love it. I love how he talks about it's more than just about the stats. It's about how they are as people and how they're different now after their major league career. That is awesome.
He's giving you a little bit of a heads up on what you'll find in the book, but when you read the chapters and you get a little more in depth about showing up for a predetermined interview with Dwight Gooden, and then Dwight just saying, "Is he gone yet?" He just abandons them. And Carlton Fisk having to say, "Yeah, I'm a millionaire looking to buy a home here on the golf course," to cozy on up to Carlton Fisk. It's pretty cool.
And the determination the guy had to get after it. He had all this rejection on his book, and he kept going, man. He didn't give up. And look at this. He made a fantastic book, and it led to him being able to write another book about something he loves, which is the wrestling. Man, that's just awesome. Love it. That's America, man.
That is. And another thing, you get the goods and the bads. The good thing in this book is a lot of those guys, the guys who quote unquote had the maybe 10-year cup of coffee, but we're never superstars, Eric. How they treated them like they were just, a guy down the street.
Right. And
just
it's crazy.
Ordinary Joe.
I mean, you got guys from Carlton Fisk and Vince Coleman and Doc Gooden all the way down to, I don't know who the guy who was the 4th of July. I couldn't remember his name, and people who didn't hear too much. And then you had another guy who actually works for Scott Boras as a psychologist. I mean, that's pretty
cool.
That's pretty
the depth of your education by reading this book. It's more than just baseball cards. It's about his journey. It's really cool.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
So what are we doing, Eric? Are we going to talk a little Giants ball? Or are we going to come on later on?
We'll come on. As a matter of fact, the show is already up for 8:00. We'll come back on and we'll talk about the Giants' victory in San Diego. Boy, there was a lot going on in that game. Holy crap.
Boy, I can't wait the water was flowing and the sunscreen was lathering. It was a hot day, 90+ degrees, and the ball was flying. We'll talk about it coming up after 8. See you then, Eric.
All right. See you at 8, Glenn, and we'll see the rest of you. Hey, make sure you guys subscribe and hit that like if you liked what you saw today. And we'll see you guys tonight at 8:00.
Thanks again, guys, for being in the chat. And thanks again to Brad for taking time to join us here online at Giants Sports Talk Live.
All right. See you guys tonight. Woo!
You've been watching Giant Sports Talk Live with Eric and Glenn, a Northern Lights Entertainment Broadcasting production.